Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, Chair Graves, and Ranking Member Larson. Members of the committee, I am just so honored, and I believe that Ranking Member Larson knows how honored I am to be speaking in front of this committee today. As a member of Congress, a new member, again, I've long dreamed of sitting in this seat and talking about how much I love transit. I was born premature with a visual impairment, and one of the few folks, I believe, in the United States Congress who was born with a congenital visual impairment. I'm legally blind. And as a blind person, a transit-dependent person, I have relied on public transportation for all of my life. In fact, as a young mom, a teen mom, going to college, taking my baby to daycare, I had to make decisions on where I lived, what time the bus or the train came to get to work, to turn in assignments, to be able to make a way out of no way for my family. The time tax, when you are transit dependent, you are not only reliant on transit agencies, you're reliant on good employees getting to those bus stops at the time that you need to get there to be able to get to work. I know this all too well. Public transit for me was not just a convenience, it was a lifeline, an opportunity, stability, and survival. The deep personal connection that I've had as a transit-dependent person actually led me to run for office and to win an office to be on the board of directors of Bay Area Rapid Transit, one of 3 elected transit boards in the nation. Better known as BART, I helped lead BART during a very difficult time during COVID, and I want to thank this committee for your advocacy and support. And despite declining ridership during the COVID pandemic, BART continued to run trains for nurses and janitors and grocery clerks, the essential workers who kept our communities going. And like so many other public transportation agencies in this country, we did it during that crucial period because of the federal partnership, because of the brave men and women who sat on this committee who understood that mobility is in fact not a privilege, that it is a right. The $69 billion that moved really from this committee all over the nation in emergency support to support systems like Bay Area Rapid Transit led institutions to move instead of collapse. And again, so thankful to the members of T&I for leading us through that process. But as emergency funds, they're sunsetting in 2026. Systems across the country face, and you all know this, a fiscal cliff. The situation is not just urgent, it is in fact existential. BART has had to heavily rely on fare revenue, which unfortunately has made up 70% of our operating budget, but now fare revenues only cover about 25% of the total operating cost. This isn't about poor financial management. In fact, it's about decades, it's a national issue, decades of transit disinvestment, underinvestment, leaving us far behind our global partners, our global peers, our adversaries, in building modern, reliant public transportation systems. This committee has been integral in putting together IIJA, a historic down payment on our nation's infrastructure that we must build on now. Without new, reliable funding, BART and other transit agencies around the country are facing severe service cuts. Bay Area Rapid Transit, up to 80%. This means no weekend service. This means layoffs. This means devastating impacts to transit congestion and air quality. I gotta say, for many of us who are speaking nationally about the crisis of public transportation, some of us don't have car keys. We rely our lifeblood on being able to access reliable and safe public transportation. The cuts now wouldn't just harm transit systems, they disproportionately would harm low-income folks, vulnerable folks, transit-dependent folks, and of course, our elders. seniors and people with disability. Slashing transit services now means slashing and slamming the door on these communities. In California, I only have a few seconds left, but in California, legislation has been introduced to give voters the opportunity to continue to support public transportation in its dire phase, but the states can't do it alone. I would love to work with this committee. Mr. Larson, I would love to be a shadow member of this committee as a part of the Democratic Party. I'll be outside working with you all as we move towards a transit equitable nation. Thank you so much for having me today. I would love to take any questions.
The chair thanks the gentlelady. Are there